stop right here. What this rancher did when he saw the town turn cruel will stay with you long after this story ends. The sun burned high over Dustwater Town, its streets dry and lifeless, the wind carrying the scent of old regrets. Every day at noon, the same grim scene unfolded outside the saloon. A frail woman in a tattered dress, her hair tangled, her face marked with bruises and shame, stood helpless as townsfolk jeered, tossed mud, and hurled insults like stones. Her name was Mary Dalton, the widow of a man everyone despised, a gambler who'd cheated half the town before dying in a brawl. And though her husband was gone, the town's anger never faded. They made her pay for his sins. Watching from his porch atop the hill stood Elias McGraw, a wealthy rancher whose name carried weight across 3 counties. He was a man of few words, his presence alone enough to silence a room, but as he watched Mary's torment day after day, something inside him burned, a quiet fury mixed with sorrow. Elias had seen cruelty before, but never like this. They ain't worth the dust on her boots, he muttered under his breath. Still, he did nothing, not yet. Each day he told himself the same thing: it wasn't his place. Until one afternoon, when the beating went too far. The sheriff looked away, the preacher closed his doors, and Mary fell to her knees in the street, clutching her ribs as laughter echoed around her. That was the moment Elias stepped down from his porch, spurs ringing, coat billowing in the wind. The crowd went silent. He walked right up to Mary, knelt beside her, and in a voice low and steady said, "You've suffered enough." Then he turned to the townsfolk, his gaze hard as steel. "I'll marry this woman today, and God help the man who ever lays a hand on her again." Call to action. If this moment already has your heart pounding, hit like and subscribe. You'll want to see how far this rancher's promise takes him. Be sundown. Dustwater was buzzing like a hornet's nest. Some called Elias mad. Others said he'd lost his mind over pity. But he didn't care. He took Mary to the chapel, her face pale, her hands trembling, still too weak to believe what was happening. "You don't have to do this," she whispered as they stood before the preacher. Elias looked at her, eyes steady. "I don't do things I don't mean, Mom." His voice held no pity, only certainty. When the preacher stammered about propriety and scandal, Elias cut him short, read the vows. And so, under the flicker of oil lamps and the stunned eyes of half the town, they were married. No music, no joy, just 2 souls bound by circumstance, and a vow that would change everything. That night, Elias brought her home to his ranch, a vast stretch of land surrounded by open plains and silence. He showed her the guest room, the kitchen, the barn, places that felt more like fortresses than comforts. "You're safe here," he told her simply. But safety wasn't trust. Mary moved like a ghost, barely speaking, haunted by years of abuse and humiliation. Elias didn't press. He worked his land, fixed fences, kept his distance, but always made sure there was food on her plate and fire in the hearth. Weeks passed. One morning, he found her tending to the horses, hands steady, eyes brighter than before. "They listen better than people," she said softly. Elias smiled faintly. "That they do." It was the first time she'd spoken to him without fear. From that day on, something began to change. Not fast, not easily, but like rain softening dry earth. And for the first time in years, Mary began to believe she might be worth saving. But the town couldn't stand it. Rumors spread like wildfire that Mary had bewitched him, that Elias had lost his mind. The saloon keeper spat when her name came up. "She's a curse," he said. Others followed, whispering that a woman who'd once been beaten deserved her shame, not protection. One afternoon, as Elias was in town collecting supplies, he overheard a group of men mocking her, calling her names that made his blood boil. He stepped forward, towering over them. "You got a problem with my wife, you got a problem with me." The laughter died fast. The men backed off, but their eyes burned with hate. That night, as the sun sank red behind the hills, Elias found his barn doors open, livestock scattered, fences cut. He knew who did it. They weren't just punishing Mary, they were testing him. He loaded his rifle and waited. Mary begged him not to go after them. "They'll only come harder next time," she pleaded. Elias shook his head. "Then I'll be ready." She stepped closer, tears in her eyes. "You don't understand. You've already done enough. You gave me back my name." His heart twisted at her words, but before he could speak, gunshots echoed from the distance. The fight had come to his doorstep, and Elias McGraw was not the kind of man to let evil win twice. The next morning, Dustwater awoke to silence. Smoke drifted from the hills. Word spread fast. Elias McGraw had faced the men who came for his land, and won. 3 outlaws lay tied in the sheriff's yard, and Elias stood beside them, coat torn, face bruised, rifle still in hand. The townsfolk gathered, speechless. Mary stood nearby, her hands clasped, tears glistening in the morning light. The preacher, trembling, asked, "Why risk everything for her?" Elias looked around at the faces that had once jeered, then turned to Mary with quiet pride, "Because no one deserves to be broken for another man's sins." His words fell heavy and true. From that day, no one dared lay a hand or a word against her. The town that once beat her now stepped aside when she walked through its streets, her head held high. Months passed, and though their marriage began in pity, it grew into something fierce and real, a bond forged by respect, not romance, at least not at first. But as the seasons turned, the silence between them softened. One evening, under the glow of the setting sun, Mary looked at Elias and whispered, "You saved me." He shook his head gently. "No, Mary. You saved yourself. I just gave you the space to remember how." The wind carried her smile across the fields, and for the first time in years, Dustwater felt like a place where goodness could live again. Final call to action. If this story of courage and redemption touched your heart, hit like and subscribe for more powerful Wild West stories that remind us what true strength looks like.